I'm Mills. Let me share a little about how I got here. I started my financial journey fall of 2014 when I found myself with only $1.50 to my name. So clearly, I understand the frustration around money mismanagement, struggling with where to start, and the courage it takes to take ownership of your finances. Now I'm a financial coach, speaker, author, and the founder and owner of Mills Knows Bills, where I have the opportunity to teach individuals and businesses how to manage and master their money within 90 days. On this podcast, I will teach you how to stop living paycheck to paycheck, how to pay off your debt twice as fast, and how to reach your financial goals. This podcast is meant to make managing your finances accessible. So if you find that your finances are controlling you, or you simply have no idea where to start, this is the place for you. Click the subscribe button and turn on your notifications to make sure you don't miss out on any new content. I appreciate you tuning in. Let's dive into today's topic. Hello and welcome to 2022 Finances, Budgeting, and Goal Planning. If you have not yet sat down and planned out what you want your finances in 2022 to look like, this is your sign. This is your call to action, because now is the perfect opportunity for you to start gathering this information. So by the time the new year comes, you are ready to get kickstarted on that New Year's resolution. So when it comes to planning for the following year's finances, there are three main things that you really want to sit down and take a look at. Number one, you gotta see where you currently stand. That's setting a budget. Now, I understand that a lot of you out there might hear the word budget and cringe, okay? But we are going to start taking back what this term actually means. And all a budget really is a spending plan. It's a monetary reflection of your priorities. So in order for you to make sure your money is flowing and going to the places that you want it to go, you need to write it down. You need to figure out what you actually have to work with. You can't shoot for something as successfully if you don't know where you currently are, right? You need to know your current situation before you start aiming toward that destination. So that's setting a budget. If you've never set a budget before, there are a few things that you want to keep in mind. Number one, you need to know what your gross income is. That's your pre-tax dollar amount. Why is that important? Well, if you don't ever take a look at your pay stubs, you don't know how much you're actually paying in taxes. You don't know how much you're paying for insurance or any other items that are automatically being deducted from your paycheck. Knowledge is power. So you need to know what you're earning, where your money is coming from, and what you're paying, where your money is going. So you need to know your income. Next, you need to know your taxes, what you've been paying on average, so you can estimate that. You also need to know your living and debt expenses. And these are mandatory living expenses, and then these are minimum debt expenses. These four items together, they make up what's called the mandatories of your budget. These are the items that you have to pay each month, regardless if you make money or not, right? The living and debt expenses. And this is important because by knowing what the total of those two main categories consist of, you can project how much of an emergency fund you need. And we'll get there in just a second. But once you have your income, you subtract out your taxes and your living expenses. Any income that's left over is called your discretionary income. And this is the money that you can spend at your discretion. Earlier, I said that a budget is a monetary reflection of your priorities, and it is. But I want to fine-tune that statement a little bit and state that how you spend your discretionary income is a monetary reflection of your priorities. And the reason why is because this is where we have the most control over our finances. Anything that we have left over, how we spend that is really what will make a difference in our financial future. These are things like dining out, entertainment, clothes, saving, investing, expediting our debt payoff, putting money aside for other things that we want to spend money on. How we allocate that money is really where we get to make a difference moving forward. So once you have identified where you currently stand and you've gotten down to that discretionary income number, pause, take a second, and this is where you get to complete action item number 2, which is setting goals. Now, there are 4 things that every person should have checked off of their list when it comes to finances. Number 1, they should have an emergency fund. Number 2, they should pay off as much debt as they possibly can. And that comes with a little bit of an asterisk. It depends on inflation. It depends on the interest rate the debt is costing you. Lots of other factors in that regard. But having a plan to pay off the debt that you need to get rid of. Third, you need to have some non-retirement investments. And fourth, you need to have some retirement investments. There are some other things in there like insurance that we should have to protect our money. But for the purpose and overview of this particular conversation, we are talking about establishing goals for the new year. So with that said, what goals do you have for the new year? Do you have an emergency fund? Do you have a plan to pay off your debt faster? Or are you just finding yourself on that hamster wheel of always paying it off or down but never paying it off? What about investments? Do you have any investments? Do you know where to start? These are all things that we should be empowered to do. And if you find yourself overwhelmed, well, take it step by step. The point of this exercise is to set out all the goals that you would like to accomplish throughout 2022. Once you have those goals listed out, as well as all of your extraneous expenses and spending and all of that, that's where you can then prioritize how you allocate your discretionary income. So we talked about setting a budget, finding where you are. The second thing was establishing goals, where you want to be. And third, consistency. People want to know what the big secret is to financial success. I promise you, it's not how much money you make. It's about how much you keep and how consistent you are with your habits and taking a look at your finances. It's not about being perfect when it comes to your finances. In fact, perfection is not only overrated, it's not sustainable, honestly. Honestly, we're all human. There's always going to be some outside factor. So my biggest piece of advice to you is to be consistent with reviewing your numbers, being consistent with making sure your numbers are actually logged and you can compare them to your budget, keeping track of where you stand on your goals. This is the time to put in the grunt work. Get ready for the new year. I do have a few people who wrote in some questions, so I'm going to go over some of those. One person wrote in and said, are there things/expenses that we should reevaluate each year? I wouldn't say one thing in general, but I would just say if you are making a budget, take a look at your expenses and almost with an objective view, take a look at what you're actually spending for those items. Number 1, do you still want to have that expense? Do you still need to have that expense? Number 2, is it worth that price point? I had a client about a year ago who was consistently spending about $900 a month on dining out alone. Just dining out, not even groceries, right? Depending on your budget, you might think $900, that's nothing. Some of you might think $900, that's a lot, right? It's not a one size fits all. But with that said, this person took a look at that $900 a month, and I asked a very simple question. I said, do you want to be spending $900 a month on dining out? This person said no. I would much rather be putting most of that money towards a down payment on a home. So you see, don't get caught up in what you have been spending. A fixed expense, a variable expense, something mandatory, something not mandatory. Take a look at everything that you spend money on with a fresh set of eyes. The second thing I would say is reevaluate your goals. That's definitely something you want to reevaluate, not just every year, but I would say, if nothing less, quarterly. I would encourage you to look at it monthly, but quarterly at the bare minimum. If you're not keeping track of your goals, it's not as easy for you to achieve that end result. About a year ago, I made a live Q&A, and I was actually using that opportunity to go through my budget that Joe and I had set and point blankly explain what we were spending money on and what our goals were. And I remember one thing I said was something along the lines of, because I am going to be consistent with how I am looking at my numbers and setting money aside and making sure that I'm doing the automatic account transfers, I will have enough money to put a down payment on a home by the end of this year. And that's true. Should have also been specific and said, I'll be able to find a home because the Miami market is just nutso. But the point is, I wanted to prove myself right. So I did everything in my power to do that. I don't know about you, but how many times do we say things and we want to prove ourselves right? Bad or good. I'm not good at math, so I'm not going to be good at budgeting. You're going to prove yourself right because you want to be right. Take a look at your goals. Say, I'm going to achieve this goal by the end of the year because I'm going to set aside this dollar amount every month for the next 12 months. Be specific. And that's definitely something that you want to reevaluate often. To kind of follow up with that question as well, I wouldn't necessarily say other expenses to evaluate each year, but what I will say is don't forget about your annual expenses. Don't forget about that car registration or the credit card fees or birthday or holiday gifts. Don't think that because that's not an every month expense that you shouldn't be counting that into your budget monthly. For example, if your gift spending for the entire year across birthdays and holidays, all of that, if you tally up what you actually spend for an entire year and the total is $1,200, divide that number by 12, that's $100 a month. You should be setting aside $100 every month starting January. Set it aside in a separate account. You might not spend that money every month, and you know what? That's okay. Let it build up because you might be in a similar situation with like me where most of my expenses come out in May and December. There's a lot of people I know who have birthdays in May. So I build it up, use it, build it up, use it. I'm setting that money aside so that way by the time Christmas comes around, I don't feel a huge hit to my budget in December. I don't feel like I have to give up everything else in order to get the gifts that I want to provide my family and friends. So reevaluate each year what you spend on your annual and variable expenses. They don't have to be monthly, but take a look at a bird's eye view and embed it monthly. I would suggest that you put that money in a separate savings account, meant only for those expenses. You can even nickname your bank account holiday gifts, birthday gifts, doesn't matter. If you are a business owner and you use Quickbooks for your bookkeeping for your business, you can open up a Quickbooks cash account, and that cash account, you can actually have that money split into multiple virtual envelopes. So rather than having a ton of bank accounts to keep track of, you just put it into one account and then you can funnel it into different accounts. I would say do that for your business expenses that are annual or variable, right? If you do not have a business or if you don't have QuickBooks, I believe Ally Financial, ALLY, has something similar where you can open up an account and you can use those virtual envelopes. And if I remember correctly, their percentage that they pay, their interest that they pay, is pretty good in comparison to the rest in the industry. So I would say open up a separate account or open up an account that has the ability to have those multiple envelopes so you can easily keep track of it. And then the last thing I was going to talk about with this question of are there things or expenses we should reevaluate each year was try to reevaluate what you are spending monthly but could be paying annually. For example, car insurance, that's every 6 months. Amazon Prime, that could be annually. Life insurance, that could be annually. So take a look at your monthly expenses that if you were to pay them for the year or 6 months in full, you would get a discount on. It might not seem like a lot, $12 $20 here and there, $50 here and there, but when you add it all up, it makes a huge difference. It really does. And when you see what that difference is, if you were to invest that amount and let that money work for you, how much could that money turn into? If you don't know the answer to that, let me know. When it comes to saving money monthly versus annually, it's going to take some time to get there. And that's okay. Have that separate account, have that separate virtual envelope, and pay double, right? If your car insurance is $100 a month, give $100 to the insurance company and give $100 to yourself. So by the time 6 months is up, you have that money already set aside. You have the full $600. And then starting the next 6 months, you're not paying $200 a month, $100 to the insurance and $100 to yourself. You're only paying the $100 to yourself. You see how that works? How you're building it up and then you can use it for saving. So those are a couple things I wanted to touch upon that people don't typically think of, but when all these little things are added up, it really does make a difference. It really does. The other really good question we got in today was, what's a good way of tracking your expenses, money coming in, payments, your balances, etc.? There are so many amazing platforms out there. There really is. I have a system that works for me. I help clients establish systems that they then fine-tune to fit their lifestyle, their business, their personal finances. I'm going to give you the lawyerly answer first, okay? A good way of keeping track of everything is to be consistent. Whatever platforms you want to use, whatever software you want to use or routines, be consistent with it. Don't get distracted with what other people are doing unless it's something you think could really help you. But instead, take it with a grain of salt. See what it is that they're doing. See if you think it will actually work for you and be sustainable in the long run. And if it's not, that's okay. There's so many ways to be financially successful, okay? It does not have to be a one-size-fits-all. But I'm going to talk about what I do and how I actually keep track of my stuff and how it helps me. First thing I do is set a budget. And I use my budgeting tool that's on my website. If you've never downloaded it, it's free. There's one in English, one in Spanish. Download it. Get it going. This is where you can take a look at everything all in one spot. But this is more of your roadmap, right? How do we take that roadmap and use it moving forward? Well, if you have a business, or if you're, self-employed, variable income earner, use a bookkeeping software to keep track of your business expenses on the business side, right? Then you can run reports automatically that show you, and you can compare to the budget that you've set, but they show you what you've actually spent or saved in comparison to what you wanted it to look like. If you don't have a business, or if you don't have Quickbooks or another bookkeeping software, there's a ton of different apps out there. Mint is probably my favorite. And there's quite a few other really good ones out there, but because it's free, you can automate it, you can keep track of everything pretty easily. The user face of it is really easy to pick up. I suggest Mint. I do. If you are somebody that likes to see everything granular, like little line items by line items, YNAB is very good. I would say that it's not as user-friendly if that's not how your brain operates, and it's also not free. But if that is how your brain works, it might be worth the monthly investment for it. With that said, don't feel like whatever you start with is what has to be your end-all be-all. Give yourself like 90 days with the system and with implementing these new habits to see how it's actually working for you. That's why my program with my clients is 90 days, because you need to give yourself time to learn new habits, get used to new systems. I hope you all have a great day, and if you have questions, reach out, DM me.
Thank you so much for listening and allowing me to be part of your financial journey. As a thank you for tuning in, I'm offering you first access to special tools and information. simply subscribe to my newsletter found on my website at millsknowsbills.com, where you can find my free budget setting tool, workshops, and so much more. You can also connect with me on social. I have Instagram, YouTube, TikTok, LinkedIn, Facebook, Twitter, and Pinterest. All links are available in the show notes. I appreciate you tuning in and spreading the love. Thank you for all the positive comments on social, and you know I love seeing your 5-star reviews as well. Always remember, mo money, no problems. I'll see you next time.